Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show. Along with Zach Meisel, I'm Adam the Bull. We've got plenty to get to. The Guardians are in their first real slump as a team. Fans are panicking. They're jumping off the bandwagon. What is happening? Can we get everybody back in the mix? Can we get them all back? We're going to discuss that. And plus, Zach is going to tell us who the Guardians are going to draft, right? You know it, Zach, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to narrow it down to about 6 guys for us here today, only on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardians show.
You forgot the name of the show. It's a kind of a wacky name, but
Been a long week.
It has been. You've been sick. You've been traveling. You got back from Detroit. That's all coming up on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian show. All right, everybody. A lot to get to today. Here we go. Zach, let's begin with the Tigers and the Guardians dropping 3 of 4. I think people are particularly pissed off about Spencer Howard, but what frustrates me about the listen, I don't love that they started Spencer Howard. We kind of knew what was going to happen yesterday when they started Spencer Howard. Spencer Howard, who, by the way, was a good prospect at one point in his life.
Very good.
Yes. He's now become one of those pitchers, and there's a number of these guys who bounce around the league from team to team, who get DFA'd and then picked up and then start a game and then go to the minors and start another game. And the way fans reacted, and again, I'm not saying I love that Spencer Howard started. I mean, on the UCSS yesterday, I was like, yeah, I said he's going to give up. I think I said he was going to give up 5 runs in 4 innings. So I was close. He gave up 4 runs in 3 innings. And, they were facing a good pitcher yesterday. But still, it's like every team does that. Even the big money Yankees, Mets, they have some starts where they go bullpen game or they bring in a Spencer Howard or a guy, maybe not specifically him, but a guy like him to make a spot start because somebody needs a breather or there's a number of guys hurt, whatever it may be. It happens. To say this is only something the Guardians would do is silly. It means you're not paying attention to baseball.
So I think that this team can be criticized because it is the same thing that plagues them most times that they lose. It's the rotation. And we can go back and criticize the front office for not adding to the depth. Like, depth was an issue. We knew that coming into the season. We thought the rotation could be a strength because Shane Bieber was healthy, Tristan McKenzie was healthy. You had year 2 with Bybee and Williams and Allen. Like, it looked like that group had a high ceiling, but there was no depth behind it. And so when you're starting Spencer Howard on July 11th, yeah, that can happen. But the context behind it, you're starting him because you're so desperate for anyone. That's an issue. And I understand fans' frustration there because it's almost like if you can just fix this thing, you can go add a starter or two. This team has very few flaws. I still think they need another bat. But even I think the frustration, or I hope the fans' frustration stems from the fact that you've had this lousy stretch, right? Like, I think they've lost 9 of 15, which also, by the way, like it's easy to just pick your arbitrary endpoints and ignore the fact that before that stretch, they had a 7-game winning streak.
Right.
But they do still have the best record in the American League. There's one team with a better record, and that's the
right.
Phillies. There's 2 teams with a better run differential. It's the Phillies and the Dodgers, barely. So you're right. Every team has some form of trial and error during a season. It's 162 games. It takes a lot to survive that. But I think it's the fact that, one, you're so close to the All-Star break. If you could just finish strong, then you can catch your breath, just relax for a few days. And 2, you're losing to teams that you shouldn't lose to. That's the other thing.
That is frustrating, yes.
Yeah, especially in the division.
There's no doubt about it. They had a chance 2 weeks ago to kind of really it looked like they were about to completely pull away in the division. I think they were up 8 on the Twins and 9 on the Royals, something like that. And since they did not play well against the Royals, they did not play well against the White Sox recently, did not play well this past series against the Tigers. And the Twins here have racked up the wins against those teams, especially the White Sox and the Tigers. And so, yes, I'm not saying fans shouldn't be frustrated. it's not that you can't criticize the team. We've criticized this team plenty. You have, I have. I mean, and if they don't make a trade for a starting pitcher in the next 18 days,
they should be crushed.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. We're going to destroy them here, and that there's no excuse. And but I will say this: I know Mike Chernoff's been out there, and Antonetti's been out there, and I heard Tom Hamilton being interviewed, and he said that they might not get a starting pitcher, and Jensen Lewis was out there saying maybe they won't get a start. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from anybody. If they don't get a pitcher, we're killing them. At least one, and they need more than one, which is clear at the case.
I mean, they could also go on like radio stations and say that they plan to acquire a kangaroo at the trade deadline, and I wouldn't even think twice. Like, I don't care what they say publicly.
Exactly. Well, I think that's some of the fan frustration, is that fans think because everybody from the Guardians is saying this, it might be tough to get a pitcher, that they're kind of setting us up to not make a move. I mean, they're being interviewed. They're not going to give anything away. What are they going to say? If Chris Antonetti goes out there and says, well, yeah, we're looking hard for a starting pitcher, well, then the price goes up. I mean, so he's not going to do that.
They also don't know they don't know exactly what this is going to look like in 2 weeks. Right. They don't know. They're also focused on the draft for the next 5-6 days. So it's we put way too much stock into what these people say. I always say, watch what they do, not what they say, because that's what matters. I should also correct myself. The Yankees have a better run differential than everyone in the American League, even though they've been in a free fall. But it's funny because I do understand the message that yes, it is going to be everybody needs starting pitching. Baltimore, that's their top need.
Yeah.
The Twins could use some starting pitching help. The Red Sox could use a start. Every contender,
Braves.
Pretty much. Maybe not the Yankees, maybe not the Phillies, but everybody could use a starting pitcher. And also, even those contenders that maybe don't need a starting pitcher for the playoffs because you have 3 or 4 guys you really trust, you can still use depth to get you through the season. So that's why the price tag is high. That being said, there are rentals out there, and there are going to be more teams that become sellers over the next 2 weeks that fall out of the race who have, I keep bringing up the name Kikuchi from Toronto because he's a rental. He's a solid pitcher. He's got good stuff. He's not an ace by any means. And he's going to walk in free agency at the end of the year. And the Blue Jays have no use for him in August and September. That's not going to cost you a ton. You don't need to make excuses for why you couldn't acquire Yusei Kikuchi at the deadline.
Right.
So I don't buy into that at all. There's always some arm who you can get. And the other point is, it doesn't have to necessarily be a frontline guy. There are ways to improve your roster for the playoffs. What you need starting pitching for is not just for that. You need to not be starting Spencer Howard every 5 days.
Yeah.
You need to not be starting Logan Allen or whoever else is struggling. Carlos Carrasco's been solid lately, but he shouldn't be your number 3 pitcher. So I think that there are ways to upgrade the roster that aren't going to kill you. And I think anyone who's listening to front office members do radio appearances and drawing a conclusion that this team's not going to do anything, I think you're costing yourself mental health for the next couple weeks. We can revisit this if that is the case. Absolutely. And they don't do anything, and then they should just be absolutely ripped.
100%. They've got 18 days to do something. It's very fluid because there's so many teams in the mix. I mean, for how many weeks have I been saying the Cubs are done, the Cubs are good? Well, now all of a sudden the Cubs just swept the Orioles. They've won 4 in a row and 6 of 7. They're only 3 games out of a wild card spot. They're a big market team. I don't know that they're going to sit. Plus, Bellinger got hurt, one of their trade chips. So maybe they won't sell now. We had the Blue Jays as a seller. Then they had played well. We took them out of the cellar for a little while. Now they're back in as a seller. And so things are going to change over the next 18 days. And right now, the selling teams have a big advantage. Once you get to the deadline, the 24 hours before the deadline, well, those now the buying teams have a little bit of advantage because they know some of these selling teams, they've got no leverage. They got to trade this guy or they're going to get nothing in return. So, yes, don't listen to the GMs. You're 100% right. There is always pitching to get. I get it that in a perfect world, we'd love to get an ace or a really good number 2. And I get the people. I think it's this frustration has been exacerbated by the fact that Ben Lively just had his worst start of the year, and Tanner Bybee's not been great his last 2 starts. So those were the 2 guys you were relying on, and they haven't been great lately. However, you made a great point there, Zach. this is really getting the pitching is almost, yes, they need at least one more starter for the playoffs. But in the playoffs, you can go crazy with your bullpen, and you can use that bullpen advantage where you only may need a starter to go 3-4 innings. That's it. 2 times around the lineup, goodbye. It is more about not overworking the bullpen in July, August, and September, keeping them fresh so they can excel in the playoffs. And that's why it's important. So whether it's Kikuchi or whatever, like I'd love to see them get, even if they get like one legitimate guy they could use in the playoffs, and then get 2 other guys who are back-end starters, but that they can give you 5 or 6 innings a game for the next 8 weeks, 10 weeks, even if they're not big pieces for the playoffs. That's going to be important leading up to the playoffs.
Yeah, it was honestly a huge blessing on Thursday was falling behind by enough runs so you could throw Austin Hedges the last 2 innings so that you didn't have to burn, I don't know, Tim Herron and
right
Cade Smith for an inning apiece there. And then you'd have them less available over the weekend in Tampa. So they've really leaned hard on these guys. I remember Gaddis, Herron, Cade Smith. Those guys are all rookies. And Gaddis has never been a regular reliever before. Cade Smith has never been in the majors. Herron has some experience, but you're asking a lot from these guys who didn't even know they were going to be in these roles until the season started. And now you're leaning on them and they've been phenomenal. So you want to make sure you're not burning them out. And the way to do that is to make sure, I mean, it's like if a starting pitcher gets through 5 innings on this team, it's like a huge victory.
Yeah.
So it's that's not a healthy formula.
No. And that was big the other day when Bybee, gets off to the bad start, gave up 4 runs in 3 innings. He looked completely out of whack in that game. He had no command. And he settled down those last 4 innings. And for him to get through 7, through 109 pitches, I think there was, by the 3rd inning, I was like, there's no way. I wouldn't have thought he was anyway. He was getting through 7 innings. But he did a good job. I mean, he did kind of ace work there, getting through 7, even though he wasn't great. He battled. Yeah,
and if you would have told me that Gavin Williams wouldn't allow a run and Tanner Bybee would go 7 innings, I would have guessed they'd probably win those games, and instead they lost those 2. So
true.
It was a strange week. I think people would feel a lot differently. Like the first 3 games were all 1-run games, coin flips essentially. And if you win 2 of those 3, you probably don't feel nearly as bad about the state of the team as you do.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, Austin Hedges, better pitcher than hitter. True or false?
It was funny. He threw it was clocked as a 70-mile-an-hour fastball, and then the next pitch was a changeup, but it was clocked at 78. Never seen that. He looked good.
I wait, only got 1 base runner.
I think Angel Martinez helped him out.
What's that?
Angel Martinez helped him out with a nice catch at the wall.
True. But that's true. But that could have been a situation where you give up 7, 8 runs, but.
And then they checked him for sticky stuff in between innings.
Yes.
He said
that would have been funny.
He said he pitched last year,
and
they wouldn't check him for sticky stuff because they weren't taking him seriously.
Yeah.
So
it might be better for the Guardians if he did get busted for sticky stuff, then they couldn't be in the lineup for 10 days.
That's
so he'd
true.
still be with the team. Because the guy is the worst hitter in baseball. Somebody asked me yesterday, who's a worse hitter, Austin Hedges and Miles Straw? And I'm like, I mean, they're the 2 worst. Miles Straw's in the minors, so I don't know, but they were the 2 worst hitters in baseball, basically.
Those guys are hitting 8th and 9th almost every day.
Yeah, for a while. Rough. Well, is Miles Straw still doing nothing in AAA? I haven't even paid attention to him.
I think so. We're talking what will they do with him next year? Is he cool just living in Columbus for 3 years and then becoming a free agent?
Still get paid. We've seen this before. We saw it with, actually, the Cubs had a guy, didn't pay him as much as Straw, but the Cubs, remember David Bodie? Remember that name?
He hit a big grand slam.
They signed him to like a 5-year, $10 million contract a few years ago. He's actually back in the big leagues now, but for the last 2 years, he was in the minors. And they finally called him back up this year. But the guy's he's not gonna give up the money. That's guaranteed money. And he's never gonna make it again. Straw's never gonna make it again.
Straw's hitting 237.
And people were arguing with me that this guy should place at 237 in Columbus.
Do they invite him to big league camp next spring, or does he have to go like with all the 18 and 19-year-olds.
Oh my God.
Sounds like a terrible Adam Sandler movie.
Yes, it does. Yeah, that's true. Uh, all right, we want to get into the draft here because it's for the first time ever the Guardians have the first overall pick. It's this Sunday. Obviously, teams. It's weird that, and it's always been this way, but it's so weird that you have the draft so close to the trade deadline. It seems. I don't like it. They should push back the trade deadline. We've been talking about this. The
Front
trade deadline,
offices
make it
hate it.
July 15th. I mean,
Yeah.
August 15th.
Front offices hate it. Like, obviously, you have a scouting director who runs your draft, and you
Yeah.
have all your scouts, and you've got your big board, and it's not like Chris Antonetti is in there, you know, deciding on his own who they're taking in the 17th
Right.
round, but there's a lot that goes into it. And so and it's not just because they have the first pick, but every single team,
Sure.
you have tunnel vision here. You have a singular focus from probably now until the end of the draft on whatever day that would be, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it does. I've been told by a few people around the league, like there's going to be a pause, a moratorium on trade talks for a handful of days, and it does take place over the All-Star break now too. So it's just like a nice little reset for the league. But front offices hate it because
Yeah.
you do yourself a disservice if you don't think about trades until after the All-Star break,
Right.
because it's just then it's
Yeah.
you don't know if you're the Guardians. It's like, well, the Orioles might have already done a bunch of homework in talking to the White Sox about crochet or something.
Right. Yeah.
And you want to get in on that, but they've got a head start on you. So you spend so much time laying the groundwork with other teams, trying to get a sense of like what teams think they're going to do, who's going to be a buyer, who's going to be a seller. And then you get to the draft and you just put everything on hold.
Right.
And then the draft ends and then you pick things up again. It's just, they hate it.
Yeah. Move it back. But we'll see. All right, I know people have asked us questions and comments. We'll get to that shortly, and we'll get to the draft in a minute. But first, let me talk to you about this, folks. If you are looking for tickets to games the second half of the year, you're looking for concert tickets, comedy shows. If you love going to baseball during the summer, you got to use the Game Time app. The Game Time app gets you great deals. I know somebody that got Bruce Springsteen tickets using the Game Time app for under $100. Good luck with that. The prices go down as you get closer to game day or concert day. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, let's get back to it here. So when it comes to the first overall pick in the draft, the last 2 days on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, we've had two draft gurus on there. One predicted the Guardians would take Travis Bazzana, said he should be the pick. The other one threw us a curveball and said the Guardians would take Chase Burns, the pitcher out of Wake Forest. I was surprised that he picked the pitcher. Other names we've heard connected to the Guardians, of course, Charlie Condon from Georgia. With him, well, we'll get to it in a second. Jack Caglione from Florida, who's a pitcher and a hitter, although I don't know that he's going to do both. And J.J. Weatherholt, the middle infielder from West Virginia. Those are the names we've heard. It seems like most people think that Bazzana and Condon are the top two guys.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like there's really good talent. I mean, it seems like they're going to get a really great player here. The question is, and I think what's interesting with Condon and Bazzana is that with Bazzana, was it Bazzana? Bazzana, right? I think I got it.
Sure.
He's going to play second base, right? So I guess
he could move to the outfield.
He could move to the outfield too? Okay. Condon, he's a third baseman. You're going to have to move him to the outfield. Both could be in the big leagues, in theory, before the end of this year. Probably next year sometime, knowing the Guardians and knowing most teams. But there's no reason that at the very least they couldn't be, either of those guys couldn't be in the big leagues by June of next year. So what do you hear? What do you think? I know the Guardians are very tight-lipped on this, but what's your guess and what's your hope?
Yeah, I have no true insight on this. I've asked a lot of people got a lot of different answers. I've got a
Yeah.
lot of people who are just as curious as I am. People
Yeah.
who work inside the organization who
Yeah.
are just as curious as I am. People I thought would be in the know who maybe aren't in the know, or maybe they are in the know and they don't know.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Chris Antonetti keeps saying they probably won't know until a few minutes before they send in the pick.
Really?
And I don't know if I buy
Find
that.
that hard to believe. Yeah.
I do think that could be a financial ploy. Um, I would guess Bazana, but there's not a whole lot of confidence behind that. It's weird. It's like Condon, Tom Hamilton loves college baseball more than anybody,
Okay.
and every day he would send a text to a couple Guardians front office members when Condon would hit a home run,
Hmm.
and this was happening daily. The guy was
Yeah.
unconscious
Yeah.
at the plate, and I felt like his name had a lot of hype behind it in like May, maybe. But Bazana seems to have gotten all the attention. Like, I know he's the betting favorite. There were whispers about whether they'd try to get JJ Weatherholt under slot so that they could
Yeah.
get better players
Right.
with the 36th pick, the 48th pick. I don't know. I'm not a draft expert. I've tried to
Yeah.
become one overnight because they have the first pick. You have the first pick. You have the largest draft pool of all time. Just go take the best player.
That's right.
That
You
that's
got to do that.
that's what I would do. But who is the best player is also up for debate here. So it'll be interesting. And I think the other thing is you never draft for need in baseball. But I do think
Sure.
there's a different calculus because no one they've never been in this situation. They've never had the first pick.
Yeah.
It is very rare to be a World Series contender and have the first pick.
Right.
And to be a World Series contender who should be in the beginning of a contention window. So
Sure.
whoever you're adding is going to be you're adding to the core you currently have.
Good
So
point.
I think this is like one of the very rare instances ever where maybe you're not drafting for need, but you are thinking about how that player fits into the fabric of what you already have. And look, Bazana and Condon can both fit into the current lineup next year or whenever, but it is, I think, worth thinking about like what that looks like. If it is Bazana, do you keep him at second base? Are you shifting Jimenez to short next year? And what are you doing with the shortstop prospects you've been stockpiling for 5 years?
Right.
So or would it just be easier to draft Condon, stick him in right field, and be done with it? I don't know.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think it's funny, you talk about not being a draft expert. When you cover baseball, you really don't pay attention to the draft that much. It's not like football or basketball where it's a big deal. This is the first time it's a big deal because they got the first pick. Even when they've had high picks before, but it wasn't really front of mind. It's not something we'd ever discuss. Maybe you do 2 minutes on it the day before, but we haven't talked about it a ton here, but now we're doing a whole segment on it. We've done a couple of segments on it on UCSS. It's just such a bigger deal because it's the first overall pick. But yeah, I watched a little bit of these guys in college, but I don't watch a ton of college baseball. I paid a little more attention only because I knew that the Guardians might take one of these guys and they were impressive, but I don't know how to scout a college player. I don't have that ability to decide, well, is this going to translate because he's playing with a metal bat?
Yeah.
Who knows? It's tough. But it's going to be fascinating to see what they do. It seems like these guys, that the floor is pretty high with both of these guys.
Yeah. I think the tough thing too, and the reason why, like people who have asked me and who have a strong opinion on this, I've replied by saying, okay, well, is there a way that they could draft somebody and you'd be frustrated, you'd be angry by that
Right.
pick? And they say, yeah, if they take Weatherholt, like I'm out on this, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I said, what do you know about this player that would anger you? Because a huge thing for them is the makeup and the work ethic and the drive to be great. And even if I watch every college baseball game on TV, I'm not getting that.
No.
Like they've spent so much time with all these kids, and they do that every year. And it's you want to know why the pitching factory is a thing, why it's worked for so long? It's because they find pitchers who want to get better, who are willing to accept recommendations and look into the data with pitching coaches and things like that. You're not getting that watching them on, like, you can't just watch on TV, watch a video and draft somebody without really getting to know them. And so that's why whoever they take, like, we'll see how it works.
I think people would be annoyed with Weatherholt only because we've heard that they would draft him just to save money. Now, maybe he turns out to be the best player. And I know the guy we had on Wednesday said, hey, I think Weatherholt could end up being the best player in this draft. That's one person's opinion. Who knows? But anyway, we'll see. Obviously, it's Sunday, and Zach and I will be doing a special 8 a.m. show on Monday morning to recap the final series against the Rays before the All-Star break, and we'll talk about who they drafted. I'm curious. I don't know. Do the Guardians players pay any attention to this? Like, so it's not on their radar at all?
I don't think so. No. And especially, like you said, it's with the timing too.
Yeah.
It's weird. They're in Tampa this weekend. And Sunday night is just, it's the traveling secretary's worst day of the year, because you've got players flying all over the place. It's actually nice that they're in Tampa, because you'll get guys who will fly from there back to the Dominican, or over to Texas for the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Just all over the place. So, they'll be on a flight when all this is going down. And then they're going to relax for a few days in the All-Star break and shut off the outside world. So I don't think they care. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of guys come back on Thursday to Cleveland and don't even know who they took.
That's true. By the way, speaking of the All-Star game, I know there were some people who thought either Hunter Gaddis or Cade Smith should have made it, and it would have been nice if they did in theory, but in a way it's good that they didn't, because they both could use the rest of these days off. Let's get to some fan comments before we wrap up for the day. Here we go. Zinter, this team has played quite a ways over its head the first half. Some regression is inevitable, just a matter of how much. No team plays great for an entire season. No team, no matter how good they are. They'll come out of this. Madden Ramon. I went to the last two games of the series. It was annoying because Tiger fans were chanting Cleveland sucks like they aren't in fourth place. It's, what are you going to do? You should have chanted Detroit sucks back.
They are still on pace for 100 wins, by the way.
Yeah,
I was
exactly
surprised by
that. Mikey McNuggets tweets, hey, guys, just a reminder, I tuned into the show just to hear Zach's takes. Madden, please get a pitcher so the fan base doesn't need to kill them. Okay. Best guard show on the interweb, hands down. Bybee was okay, not great. I don't think anybody said he was great. Did we say he was great? He certainly.
I did think it was cool. He was at 95 pitches, went back out for the 7th.
Yeah.
And Vogt had told him ahead of time, you get 2 more hitters, and that was it. So he gets the first 2 guys out. He's up at 104 pitches, I think. And Vogt goes out there, and Bybee, he got the second out, and he had started walking just to do his lap after you get an out. And he's in between the mound and the first baseline, and he's looking at the dugout to see if Vogt comes out. And Vogt comes out, and Bybee's like, oh, no, come on, let me get one more. Yeah. And Vogt goes to the mound and doesn't make the pitching change.
Yeah.
And they talked on the mound, and he said, look, I need you to be healthy. We need you for the long haul. Go get one more guy. And he struck him out.
Yeah.
And then he's celebrating. He's pumped up, double fist pump, and then the umpire interrupted him to check him for sticky stuff.
That sucks. But it's
109
good.
Pitches, career high. And it was I know he was shaky for the first couple innings, but he did settle in and give them what they needed.
And I think you do things like that as a manager. You show some faith in the guys. It builds up goodwill on the team. I know that's a great thing. Let's see. Derek says, pal, luck isn't 22 games over 500. Zinter saying the Guardians have been lucky. K-Dude, Guardians won't make the playoffs. Good luck with that. React, I want Condon. Terry Merriman, Antonio Urquidez has been putting out draft-eligible data all week. Worth looking at the one he posted with J.J. Weatherholt's 2023 numbers. You'll see why some still think he could be the best overall option. Take either Bazan or Condon. I won't be mad with Weatherholt, says Matt. All right, there you go. All right, you got the final series before the All-Star break, Zach. Be a nice break for you as well. You could use it. Games on Apple TV tonight. That should piss people off. Guardians at the Rays. Carlos Carrasco and Taj Bradley. Tomorrow it's a 4:10 start. Gavin Williams and Zach Littell. And then Sunday, Ben Lively is on the hill for the Guardians against Ryan Pepio. I can't remember how to pronounce his name.
I think you got it. I feel like
Yeah.
a broken record saying this every
Yeah.
time they have a new series. But
Yeah.
hey, do you want Randy Arozarena? Do you want Zach Eflin? Do you want one of their relievers like Pete Fairbanks? You know how you can go get them? Sweep the Rays.
That's right.
Knock them out of the race.
Take them out.
Make them legitimate sellers.
Yeah. All right, great stuff, Zach. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back with an Ultimate Guardian show again Monday morning at 8 because we have a special UCSS live from the Austin Carr golf outing. We'll be on live from 10 to 12, so we'll be doing this show from 8 to 8:30 Monday morning. We'll talk about the weekend series against the Rays and who the Guardians drafted. Until then, we'll talk to you next time on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show.